Hi, today we're going to be solving absolute value equations. You did an intro to the video lesson with your teacher. I want you to, right now, read the first sentence, fill in this blank, and see if you can answer these two questions. Your teacher can pause the video while you do that. Okay, so the absolute value, written with these symbols, is the distance a number is from 0 on the number line. And so how far is 4 on the number line from 0? And hopefully you said 4. And then how far is negative 4 from 0 on the number line? And hopefully you again said 4. So notice that the distance can never be negative. So when we're talking absolute value, we're just talking about distances, so all the answers end up being positive. Okay, so to solve an absolute value equation, here's the steps. There's 4 steps. You write 2 equations. One is the positive side of the number line. This says positive distance. Of course, all distance is positive, but the point is it's on the positive side of the number line. And 1 is on the negative side of the number line. And again, it says negative distance, but distance can't be negative. You're really just on the negative side of the number line from 0. And then, third step, isolate the square root. Now, it might not look like that. It might actually look like this. And isolate means get it by itself. If there was a number out front here or a number being added here, you'd have to get rid of it. Or it could end up looking like this. So it could be an expression inside the absolute value. But you have to get rid of anything on the outside of it first before you can go any further, before you can write your 2 equations. Okay, follow the steps for solving an equation. That just means all the steps that you learned last week. So the first one, you're going to write 2 equations without the absolute value symbol. So you have to think a little bit here. You have to think, okay, what number could I put right here? Well, I could put 4 right there. Or I can say and, you could put negative 4 right there. So my 2 equations here are this x right here equals 4, because that's what I can put in place of the x, and it equals negative 4, because see right here, it's what I can put in place of the x. So we wrote our 2 equations, and notice following the steps for solving an equation requires you to get the x by itself. So notice the x is already by itself. We're done. That's the answer. Hey, the next one's a little bit trickier because you have an expression in here. So the first step is to write 2 equations. One for the positive side of the 0 and the 1 for the negative. So this 3x plus 4, it could be 10 because the absolute value of 10 is 10. So this whole thing could equal 10, or it could equal negative 10. And so we have to write our 2 equations. I'm just going to change colors. One equation, 3x plus 4 can equal 10. And 3x plus 4 can equal negative 10. Now, you just follow the steps of solving an equation, because now it just looks like the equations from last week. So you minus 4 to both sides. And we divide by, what do we divide by? 3. And so then you get x equals 6 divided by 30 is 2. So that's just one of the answers. Now, I didn't stress this when we started, but now I'm going to stress it now that you've seen a little bit. you should always get two answers. Or, you'll see later, two answers, or sometimes you get no answers. So two answers or zero answers. Okay, so here, solve this equation over here to get our second answer. Minus 4 to both sides. And this is an equal to sign. And now some people freak out when they see, well, 3x equals negative 14. What in the world do I do? Because negative 14 is not divisible by 3. Well, you're going to see a lot this year that things don't work out all pretty all the time. And so you just leave it negative 14 over thirds. Now, some people change it to a mixed number, but you don't really have to do that. A lot in algebra we leave it as improper because when we talk about slope is rise over run. You need a rise and a run, so it's very common just to leave it as an improper fraction. So notice we have two answers, and you're done. Okay, so again, first step, write your two equations. What two numbers could go right here? Well, it could be 2. 2 is 2 away from 0 on the number line, or negative 2. So here's your two equations. 13 minus 5x equals 2, and 13 minus 5x equals negative 2. And because we have two equations, we're going to have two answers. This is very important because it's the most common thing people forget when they're doing absolute value. So go ahead and solve these two equations. You all know how to do that. Do that on your own. Okay, check your answers. You should have gotten 11/5 and x equals 3. And if you didn't get those answers, look back at the steps that I did while you were doing yours and see where your mistakes were. Okay, and again, now try the next one. Try it the whole thing by yourself, and then I'll give you the correct answers. Have your teacher pause the video now. If you're at home, pause the video now, and then work this out. And I'm going to give you the answers. Okay, so you should have paused the video, you should have worked it out, and here's your answers. And you should have your work shown. If you're doing this at home and you just write work and you just write the answers, I'll know that you didn't do it on your own, you just copied what I did. So make sure that you work that out, follow the steps that we did up above, write your two equations, set it equal to 14 and negative 14, and then solve those equations using the methods you used or learned last week. Okay, example 5. Now if you look at this, you say to yourself, okay, what could we put right here to equal negative 8? Well, remember absolute value means distance from 0. Can distance ever be negative? No. Distance cannot be negative. Not until you get to trigonometry, pre-calculus, and then they'll talk about vectors, and they can be negative, but we're not there. So distance with absolute value cannot be negative. So x, we say, equals the empty set. This just means no solution. This is a more advanced way of writing it. And as you get into Algebra 2, you should learn the more advanced ways of writing things. And we're done. That was kind of an easy one because we're like, oh, it can't be negative, we're done. Okay, now this one is one of those, we haven't used step 3 yet, where you have to isolate the absolute value. Yeah, it's step 3. So we have to do step 3. We have to isolate this square root of 3 minus, or I'm sorry, absolute value of 3 minus x. So we have to get rid of this negative 3 that's being times, because there's nothing there. So we divide it. And then these cancel, you get absolute value of 3 minus x equals negative 4. Now hopefully you notice again that we have an absolute value equals a negative, so absolute value is distance from 0. It can't be negative, so again x equals no solution. And it's good to write no solution in case you get home later and go, what does that mean again? So write yourself a note. Last one. Okay, this one's a little bit longer. We still have to isolate. This is step 3. We have to isolate this absolute value really before we can write our 2 equations. So this, we get rid of what's being added or subtracted first. In this case, the 15 is subtracting something, but it's our addition subtraction. And I've told my students that, and a lot of students do well with this, do SAD, when you're solving, do SAD-MEP. S-A-D-M-E-P. It's PEMDAS backwards, because we're working backwards to the x. So we get negative 9, absolute value of negative 5 minus x, absolute value equals negative 27. Now right here, some people might say, well, look, we have an absolute value equals a negative. We can't do this. Well, we haven't isolated this yet, so we still have to do the next step. We have to divide by the negative 9 that's being times, so we divide it to undo it. And so now we have that the absolute value of negative 5 minus x equals a positive, because look at our negatives will cancel each other out. Negative divided by negative is a positive. So now we write our 2 equations. Go ahead and write those 2 equations on your own. See if you can do it. And then go ahead and solve them on your own. Check them, make sure you got them right. Okay, go ahead and do those. Of course, I'm going to do it on here, but don't peek. Try to look away and do it. And then I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to write it so you can look back at your steps. Make sure you're adding your integers, your positive and negative numbers. Make sure you're adding them correctly. And when you're adding integers, positive and negative numbers, think of money. If I owe someone $3 and I get paid $5, now I can pay off my debt of $3 and still have $2 left over. And that's the end. Again, go back, check your answers. And remember, when you're doing absolute value, how many answers should you get? 2 or none. No solution. Talk to you later.